And I said, Jimmy, what do I got to do to know Jesus like you? What do I got to do to know? What do I got to do to know God?
Today, my guest is Scott Schneider, and in his book, Diamond in the Rough, a fictional character named Taylor Green had a good life in his home with his wife and kids and a partner. He was a partner in a law firm, but his past caught up with him, and Taylor becomes angry, taking on a downward spiral. But then Jesus came to the rescue. So welcome, Scott.
Hi, thank you, Nancy.
I have to ask you, is this your character, Taylor Green?
Mostly, yes. It's not an autobiography, but the heart of the character is me, Nancy. That's the first time I've ever publicly confessed that, but yes, it is.
Okay, so what turn of events allowed Christ into your life to bring you freedom from this character of anger, pain, and alcohol? Can you talk to us about your testimony?
And my parents struggled in their marriage. My mother had a very serious alcohol problem, Nancy, and my parents got divorced, and my mother's struggles led her to take her own life. She took her own life when I was 18. And my whole family suffered as a result of that. My way of dealing with it, Nancy, was that I was determined. I always wanted to be a lawyer. And I was determined to, have a good life. And as far as God was concerned, though we grew up Catholic, I didn't want anything. I didn't listen. I didn't want anything to do with Christ. I didn't think that he was real. I thought it was just religion. And I was just a very angry young man, but I put it to, I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to be somebody. I'm not going to be this. And I had a work hard, play hard mentality where I worked hard in school and I was determined to be a lawyer. And but on the side though, that's the cover story. I look good. But the backstory was I drank excessively, but on weekends. I medicated myself with alcohol, with, sexual sin. And I carried with it all the shame and the guilt that goes along with it. But I had a good cover for it, because I was going to be a lawyer. And it all came to a head, Nance, when I was 24 years old, because I had finished my first year of law school. And for those out there who are attorneys, they know that that's the make it or break it year. They do the sorting then. If you make it through the first year of law school, you're gonna make it, and you're gonna be a lawyer. Well, I made it through the first year of law school, and then calamity happened where my wife, Colleen, we were engaged at the time. She broke up with me, rightfully so, because I was really just about myself. And she was just a part of that. And I did have drinking issues. I had a lot of issues. And I didn't realize what they were until after I came to know Jesus. But the summer of 1984, Nancy, I was working. I was going to school at night at law school. I was trying to accelerate my credits. And I was working at a midtown law firm. And there was a woman in there named Pat Harris. And she was a African-American girl from the Bronx. And she was married to Owen Harris, who was from Haiti. And she was, I loved her. She was so nice. She was born again. She had this light in her eye. And I'm in a firm it was an all-Jewish law firm. And then there was she. And I was searching that summer, Nancy. I was, because Colleen had broken up with me. I supposedly was on the road to success. I felt like I honestly on the inside was questioning the meaning of life. I was that desperate. So I'm at this firm and I see this woman with a light in her eye, and I don't understand it. And then on the weekends, because I was kind of a workaholic too, I worked in a restaurant in the Hamptons in the weekends, and the owner's uncle, who was like 75 years old, his name was Jimmy, and he was from a country town in in Pennsylvania. I think it might have been Phillipsburg. I'm not sure, but a country town. He's as white and country and hick as hick could be. He comes in and he just is there to cook and help his nephew. And I'm a waiter at this restaurant. And he basically has the same light in his eye that Pat Harris did. They couldn't have been from, the variance in cultures, couldn't have been any further away. But they both started talking to me about Jesus. They both started, talking to me about Christ. And I'll never forget, I got to a place where I started to consider it. And working, in a law firm during the day, going to law school, at night during that summer, I somehow grabbed one of those Gideon's, Bibles, those green little Bibles. And Jimmy had said to me, he said, just read the book of John, Scott. Just read the book of John. And I said that I would. And then one night, before I read the book of John, I remember one Saturday night, in desperation, I was the only one in the restaurant cleaning up the outside part, the tables. Jimmy was doing the kitchen. And in a moment of desperation, I walked over to him and I leaned across the bar because he was on the other side of the kitchen side. And I said, Jimmy, what do I got to do to know Jesus like you? What do I got to do to know? What do I got to do to know God? That's exactly what I said. And I'll never forget it because I thought maybe there was some kind of prayer. Maybe there was I had no idea. But he leaned over to me, Nancy. He looked in my eyes and he said, Scott, you don't have to recite anything. You go home, you get on your knees, and you say, Jesus, I want you in my life. I did that. And I can say that lightning didn't strike. I didn't have a Paul-like experience. Lightning didn't strike. I didn't feel anything necessarily, not that I can remember. But then I picked up and I read the book of John. And it was like water on dry ground. I was reading it on the subways in between school and work. And I was reading about Jesus. And I had said, after I read about it, I remember standing on a sidewalk in Queens and just looking up at the sky and saying, Jesus, if you are who you say you are, I'll follow you. And the book of John, I got saved during that month, July in 1984. And it was like water on dry ground because I had come to a place, Nancy, before that where I realized that even if Colleen had come back to me, I was still empty. I actually was honest with myself and with God. I was like, even if I had law school, even if I become a lawyer, even if Colleen comes back, I knew what it was like when she was back. The problem wasn't her. The problem was me. I was empty. And it was I needed the forgiveness of my sin. And when I said that, when I realized that and said, God, I'll follow you if you are who you say you are. And then the book of John did come alive for me. And that's what Jimmy had said, because I went to him and that next week I went up to him and I said, hey, Jim, I read the book of John. He goes, did it come alive for you? And I was like, it did. And it was really something else. And where the book ties in is, that doesn't happen till the end, but there's a lot of good dialogue and a lot of issues with struggle and forgiveness. And there's a lot of forgiveness that I had to give. There's a lot of forgiveness that I needed. And after I got saved, I went to Patty and Owen's church, which was a church in the Bronx. And that really blew me away, Nancy, because the name of the pastor's name was Kaufman. He was Jewish. He was like 20, he was like in his 50s. And I couldn't get over it. I was like, the congregation was 1/3 Jewish, 1/3 African American, 1/3 Hispanic. I was the minority. The place was on fire for God, but it just hit me. God turned everything on its ear to say to me, I am for all people. And that changed. God changed the way I looked at um, Christianity, that it's for everybody. And it changed the way obviously I looked at myself. But that was my testimony. And there are people along the way. I can't say my wife and I got married, we had kids, I finished law school, became a lawyer. I can't say that we lived happily, ever after, because there were still things that God brought me through. But those are part of the things that are part of the book, that struggles that are very real, but how Jesus walking with us to overcome them is even more real. And that is the freedom. That is the freedom that occurs. And it's by his forgiveness and then our forgiveness of others. And it's the Holy Spirit living within us. But my testimony with respect to the book, Nancy, is that after we were married, we had a few kids. We have 6 at the time. We had like 4. And we did all the things that all parents do. The kids were in baseball, the kids were in events, and our lives were tied up in what the kids were doing. And we went to every baseball game. My wife insisted that. And there was one point where we were going down to that field at least 3 times a week. And I would leave work and go to the field. And I would like to go and watch from the sidelines, like, that long fence down, say, the right field line, because, the stands were usually packed and people were, talking and kids crying. I'd just like to watch my kid on the field. So I would walk down. And what I noticed, though, being there so much, Nancy, was I saw a lot, because I played Little League as a kid. And, my mom couldn't go because she had a drink. She was drinking a lot. She had a drinking problem. My parents were divorced. So it was a little difficult for me, not having that much support down there and stuff. And I'll never forget, though, standing on the fence and just seeing the pain. You'd see a woman, the mom, sitting on one side of the stands, and then I don't know if you've ever noticed the dad on the other side. Well, they're not together for a reason. And then there's the kid in the middle, and it's sort of like it's almost a picture of what the kid is really going through. The kid is in the middle trying to play this game, and then the parents are apart, and he's really apart, on the inside. And I could see the pain of everybody there. But I was never that guy, Nancy, that could walk up to somebody and say, there's a better way. Jesus can change your life. You can be, you don't have to be anything for anybody. You don't have to put pressure on your kids. You can enjoy them for who they are. God really loves you. I could not do that, though, Nance. I was never that guy. I would stammer at my words. I was never that guy that could just go witness to people. And God knew that. But what I was a good storyteller. Like as a trial lawyer, my success was rooted in how God showed me to get to the truth of whatever the case is, because sometimes cases are like mystery novels, and then express it to a jury, which is like telling a story. I enjoy doing that, and I can do that. And to me, the biggest draw was about Jesus was how he was such a great storyteller. Like he could take profound truths and express them to people who had no education simply by saying, once there was a man who had 2 sons, or once there was a woman who lost a coin. That's what drew me to Jesus. That's how I came to know him, through his stories. And God did the same thing for me, because one night I was on the field and it was dusk. And then I saw these Canadian geese, believe it or not, flying over the field in a formation. And I'm not a writer. I was a trial lawyer. I did that to avoid writing. And the story came to me. The bones of the story. It came to me.
You can get Scott's book, Diamond in the Rough, A Journey Towards Faith in the Midst of Struggle, at Amazon.com. Thank you for watching The Call with Nancy Sabato. If you like this segment, please share it. Until next time, may the Lord bless you.